Hi, thank you so much for stopping by P2P Relates, where we talk about all things relationships. I'm Pat Renfro, and here we are again this week, and we're taking up part 3 of Marriage 101, Self-Development. We've done the other 2 parts, and I'm going to try really hard to put them up there for you so that you can look at the prior 2 if you haven't already. The very first video was Marriage is a Commitment. And we talked about several areas that help you understand just what it is when you sign up for that commitment. Number 2 was you do need to pay attention prior to saying I do. Sometimes we pay attention, but we disregard some of the things we see when we're in the dating stage. And then when we get married to the person, it's very annoying because we really didn't evaluate what we needed to consider about sustaining. And then number 3 is what we're doing today. We're talking about self-development and how important that is. But before we get started, I wanted to ask you to subscribe to my channel by clicking the subscribe button. Also, if you click the bell, when I do uploads, you will get a notification. And finally, if you get a lot out of this at any given time, just do a like, and that helps me out. I appreciate it. Okay, so what does self-development, or we could even say self-esteem, have to do with marriage? I'll be fine if I don't really like myself. Maybe my spouse will help me like myself. It's my theory, okay? It's not researched. I'm not some psychologist, but just living a few years, I've learned that you really have to show up with confidence. You have to believe in anything you're doing. Now, let's give an example. You know, I'm good for examples. A child is getting ready to do their first recital, and maybe they're 11 years old and they're going to play the piano up on stage, and they know their parents and possible siblings will be there, and they're nervous. Or another person is going to do a solo. So they're getting ready to sing, and they look out and it's like a sea of faces, and they're looking all around, and they may get nervous. Their voices may crack. We grow, and yes, over time we become better and better, especially if we work on it and we're intentional. But my point is that the closer we get to that place where we really get it, that we're special, we're valuable, we're worthy, we're going to show up in more confidence. And when I'm not worried about how I'm perceived because I believe I'm enough, then I'm going to be able to relax into a healthy relationship. However, contrary to that, if I am thinking that somebody's criticizing me in their heart, or they're talking about me over there in the corner, or they didn't call me because they didn't like me, I'm not going to be able to relax into a relational connection with that person. And if that person happens to be my spouse, it's a even bigger dive, because when we were dating, there was a certain amount of euphoria that existed. There was enough infatuation that made us feel like, oh, we can do this for the absolute rest of our lives. But of course, as I've said before in other recordings, that stuff wears off. I don't care how wonderful you two people are that have come together and how perfect the union you are, infatuation will wear off. And there's got to be more substance in that relationship beside how cute you are, or how sexy you are, or how cool you are, or how slender and tall and beautiful and smart and successful. Those things really won't matter on a day-to-day basis. It's kind of like having a sister who sings professionally all over the world, and yet she's your sister. So while you respect her and you appreciate her, she is your sister. So you probably won't be all that starstruck on your sister like a fan would be, right? Because you've been with her your whole life. Now, does that mean you don't care about her? Absolutely doesn't mean that. Does it mean that you don't enjoy her gift and her music? It doesn't mean that either. But as far as being starstruck to the point where it's like, oh, can I get your autograph? Well, the time will pass when it's not so much you even take it for granted. It just doesn't have the same impact on you as when you first heard her voice or something to that effect, or you're a third party. In a relationship, self-development means that you're working on developing confidence, awareness, that you understand who you are, how you show up with people, what areas you need to work on, and what goals you've set to address those issues. And again, let me tie it into marriage, since we're talking about Marriage 101, self-development. We're not talking about extremes. We're talking about a well-balanced perspective of your own self. When you have that, when you really recognize how special you are and that you're worthy of love, you're worthy of happiness, and that you're valuable in and of yourself, with or without a relationship, then you can give that other person space. You can promote that other person and support them. You can actually forgive easier. You can let things go. You're not going to be paranoid or worried about whether or not they're treating you right, or when they're gone and you don't know where they are, you couldn't reach them, they're up to something. You're not going to have those insecurities. Now, that doesn't mean you won't have boundaries. It doesn't mean that you won't have expectations. But again, the less self-esteem you have, Pat Theory, the greater dependence on an external person, a friend, a husband, someone making you feel better, making you feel complete. So I can't emphasize enough that when you identify those areas you need to work on, and like I said, we're a work in progress for the rest of our lives. We're always hopefully evolving. We're always getting better. So as we identify those areas we need to work on, and we go to work, we do the research, we read books, we check in with other people that can give us suggestions, that can give us feedback. We have a blind self. We can't always know how we're showing up. So we have to ask sometimes, but we have to be wise about how we ask. We can't ask just anybody, because everybody's not out for you. Everybody is not out for your absolute best. So it starts with you. And you know what the truth is? Outside of God, your creator, there is no one who's going to love you better than you love yourself in a healthy way. Now, don't get me wrong. There are people that will walk along this journey with you who do love you. And they may love you initially better than you love yourself, especially your parents, because they brought you in this world and they'll take you out. No, I'm just playing. But especially your parents, they love you, and they love you unconditionally. However, there has, like a bird in a nest, a baby bird in a nest, there comes a day when you're going to have to take it from there and you're going to have to run with it. And so if there's areas you don't appreciate about yourself, it's your responsibility to identify that and to work on it. And the more work you do on yourself, the more growth you do, the more overcoming you do, the more self-forgiveness you do, the more grace you give yourself, the more you work on being the best you can be, the happier you're going to be. And the more well-balanced, to the point where you don't need a lot of external reinforcements to help you feel good about you. In fact, you'll get to the place where even though all those things are complements to your life, they're not your root system. You're your root system. I just wanted to finish out our 3-part series, Marriage 101. Marriage is a commitment. 2, you do need to pay attention before you say, I do, I will. And finally, 3, self-development. You gotta love yourself. Only then can you really show up and love your spouse. And if you don't love yourself because you're not approving, you're going to put yourself down. You're going to compare yourself. You're going to think they're looking at you in some kind of way, and you're going to have a lot of insecurities. And people who are afraid do a lot of drama. They really do. Work on yourself. attempt to be the very best you can be and show up in your relationship and be a lover of life and a joy to be around, because you're positive, you help them, they help you, and it's a win. That's it. So please hit the subscribe button if you want to be notified. Make sure you click that bell and give me a thumbs up. I'd appreciate it. You have a wonderful 7 next days.